Atlakviða in Grönlenzku, the Greenland Lay of Atli. There are two Atli poems in the Codex Regius, the Atlakviða, Lay of Atli, and the Atli, Ballad of Atli. The poems are not preserved or quoted in any other old manuscript, but they were extensively used by the compilers of the Volsunga saga. In the manuscript superscription to each of these poems appears the word Greenland, which has given rise to a large amount of argument. The scribe was by no means infallible, and in this case his statement proves no more than that in the period around 1300 there was a tradition that these two poems originated in the Greenland settlement. The two Atli poems deal with substantially the same material: the visit of the sons of Gjukki to Atli's court, their deaths, and the subsequent revenge of their sister Gudrun, Atli's wife, on her husband. The shorter of the two, the Atlakviða, tells the story with little elaboration. The Atli, with about the same narrative basis, adds many details, some of them apparently of the poet's invention, and with a romantic, not to say sentimental, quality quite lacking in the Atlakviða. Both poems are sharply distinguished from the rest of the collection by their metrical form, which is the malahatr, used irregularly also in the harp, employed consistently and smoothly in the Atli, and with a considerable mixture of what appears to be fornislag lines in the introduction in the Atlakviða. It is altogether probable that both poems belong to the 11th century, the shorter Atlakviða being generally dated from the first quarter thereof, and the longer Atli some 50 years or more later. In each case, the poet was apparently a Christian. In the Atli, stanza 82, Gudrun expresses her readiness to die and go into another light. And in the Atlakviða, there is frequent use of mythological names, example Varhal, Hiliskjof, and with an evident lack of understanding of their relation to the older gods. These facts fit the theory of a Greenland origin exceedingly well, for the Greenland settlement grew rapidly after the first explorations of Eirik the Red, which were in 982 to 985, and its most flourishing period was in the 11th century. The internal evidence, particularly in the case of the Atli, points likewise to an origin remote from Iceland, Norway, and the Western Isles. And the two poems are sufficiently alike so that despite the efforts of Finner Johnson and others to separate them, assigning one to Greenland and the other to Norway or elsewhere, it seems probable that the manuscript statement is correct in both instances, and that the two Atli poems did actually originate in Greenland. An interesting account of this Greenland settlement is given in William Hovsgaard's Voyage of the Norsemen to America, published by the American Scandinavian Foundation in 1914, and an extraordinarily vivid picture of the sufferings of the early settlers appears in Maurice Hewlett's Thorgils, taken from the Floamannaga saga. And from the standpoint of narrative material, there is little that is distinctively Norse in either the Atlakviða or the Atli. The story is the one outlined in the prose Drapnaflunga, largely based on these two poems, representing almost exclusively the southern blending of the Attila and Burgundian legends. See introductory note to Grapispa. In the Atlakviða, indeed, the word Burgundians is actually used. Brynhild is not mentioned in either poem. Sigurd's name appears but once in the Atli. Thus, the material goes directly back to its South Germanic origins, with little of the Norse making over, which resulted in such extensive changes in most parts of the Sigurd story. The general atmosphere, on the other hand, particularly in the Atli, is essentially Norse. As has been said, the Atlakviða is metrically in a chaotic state, the normal Malahattar lines being frequently interspersed with lines and even stanzas, which apparently are of the older Fornislag type. How much of this confusion is due to faulty transmission is uncertain, but it has been suggested that the composer of the Atlakviða made over in Malahattar an older Atli poem in Fornislag, and this suggestion has much to recommend it. That he worked on the basis of an older poem is indeed almost certain, for an older oral prose tradition, a far larger amount of distinctively Norse traits would unquestionably have crept in than are found in the material of the Atlakviða. As for the Atlamal, here again the poet seems to have used an older poem as his basis, possibly the Atlakviða itself, although in that case he must have had other material as well, for there are frequent divergences in such materials and matters as proper names. The translation of the Atlakviða is rendered peculiarly difficult by the irregularity of the meter, by the evident faultiness of the transmission, and above all by the exceptionally large number of words found nowhere else in Old Norse, involving much guesswork as to their meaning. The notes do not attempt to indicate all the varying suggestions made by editors and commentators as to the reconstruction of defective stanzas and the probable meanings of obscure passages. In cases which are purely or largely guesswork, the notes merely point out the uncertainty without cataloging the proposed solutions. Atlakviða in Grönlenzku. Gudrún, Gjuki's daughter, avenged her brothers, as has become well known. She slew first Atli's sons, and thereafter she slew Atli, and burned the hall with his whole company. Concerning this was the following poem made. Atli sent of old to Gunnar, a keen-witted rider, Knithroth did men call him. To Gjuki's home came he, and to Gunnar's dwelling, with benches round the hearth, and to the beer so sweet. Then the followers, hiding their falseness, all drank their wine in the war hall of the Huns wrath-weary. And Knithroth spake loudly, his words were crafty, the hero from the south, on the high bench sitting. Now Atli has sent me to his errand to ride, on my bit champing steed through Mirkwood the secret, to bid you, Gunnar, to his benches to come, with helms round the hearth and Atli's home seek. Shields shall ye choose there, and shafts made of ashwood, gold-adorned helmets, and slaves out of Hunland, silver-gilt saddle-cloths, shirts of bright scarlet, with lances and spears too, and bit-champing steeds. The field shall be given you of wide Gnitahaith, with loud ringing lances, and stems gold o'erlaid. Treasures full huge in the home of Damp, and the mighty forest that Mirkwood is called. His head turned Gunnar, and to Högni he said, What is thy counsel, young hero, when such things we hear? No gold do I know on Gnitahaith lying, so fair the other its equal we have not. We have 7 halls, each of swords is full, and all of gold is the hilt of each. My steed is the swiftest, my sword is sharpest. My bows adorn benches, my byrnies are golden. My helm is the brightest that came from Kjarr's hall. Mine own is better than all the Huns' treasure. Högni spake. What seeks she to say, that she sends us a ring, woven with a wolf's hair? Methinks it gives warning. In the red ring of hair of the heath dweller found I. Wolf-like shall our road be if we ride on this journey. Not eager were his comrades, nor the men of his kin, the wise nor the wary, nor the warriors bold. But Gunnar spake forth, as befitted a king, noble in the beard hall, and bitter his scorn. Stand forth, Fjornir, and hither on the floor. The beakers all golden shalt thou bring to the warriors. The wolves then shall rule, the wealth of the Niflungs, wolves aged and grey-hued, if Gunnar is lost, and black-coated bears with rending teeth bite, and make glad the dogs, if Gunnar returns not. A following gallant fared forth with the ruler, yet they wept as their home with the hero they left, and the little heir of Högni called out loudly, Go safe now, ye wise ones, wherever ye will. Then let the bold heroes, their bit-champing horses, on the mountains gallop, and through Mirkwood the secret. All Greenland was shaken, where the hard-souled ones rode. On the whip-fearers fared they, though fields that were green. Then they saw Atli's halls, and his watchtowers high, and the walls so lofty stood the warriors of Burthli. The hall of the Southrons with seats was surrounded, with targets bound and shields full bright. Mid weapons and lances did Atli his wine in the war hall drink, without were his watchmen. For Gunnar they waited, if forth he should go. With their ringing spears they would fight with the ruler. This their sister saw, as soon as her brothers had entered the hall. Little ale had she drunk. Betrayed art thou, Gunnar, what guard hast thou, hero, gainst the plots of the Huns? From the hall flee swiftly. Brother, 'twere far better to have come in Berni, with thy household helm to see Atli's home, and to sit in the saddle all day neath the sun, that the sword norns might weep for the death-pale warriors, and the Hunnish shield maids might shun not the sword, and send Atli himself to the den of the snakes. Now the den of the snakes for thee is destined. Gunnar spake. Too lawfully is it, sister, to summon the Niflungs. Long is it to come to the throng of our comrades, the heroes gallant from the hills of the Rhine. Then Gunnar they seized, and they set him in chains, the Burgundians' king, and fast they bound him. Högni slew 7 with swords so keen, and an 8th he flung in the fire hot. A hero should fight with his foeman thus, as Högni strove in Gunnar's behalf. The leader they asked, if his life he fain, with gold would buy the king of the Goths. Gunnar spake. First the heart of Högni shall ye lay in my hands, and all bloody from the breast of the bold one cut, with keen biting sword from the son of the king. They cut out the heart from the breast of Hjalli. On the platter they bore it, and brought it to Gunnar. Then Gunnar spake forth, the lord of the folk. Here have I the heart of Hjalli the Craven, unlike to the heart of Högni the Valiant. For it trembles still as it stands on the platter. Twice more did it tremble in the breast of the man. Then Högni laughed when they cut out the heart of the living helmed hammerer. Tears he had not. On the platter they bore it, and brought it to Gunnar. Then Gunnar spake forth, the spear of the Niflungs. Here have I the heart of Högni the Valiant, unlike the heart of Hjalli the Craven. Little it trembles as it lies on the platter, still less did it tremble when it lay in his breast. So distant, Atli, from all men's eyes, shalt thou be as thou, from the gold. To no one save me is the secret known of the Niflung's hoard, now Högni is dead. Of old there were two, while we twain were alive. Now is none but I, for I only am living. The swift Rhine shall hold the strife gold of heroes, that once was the gods, the wealth of the Niflungs. In the depths of the waters the death rings shall glitter, and not shine on the Huns of the Hunnish men. Atli spake, Ye shall bring the wagon, for now is he bound. On the long main ground rode Atli the Great. About him were warriors, but Gudrun, akin to the gods of slaughter, yielded not to her tears in the hall of tumult. Gudrun spake, It shall go with thee, Atli, as with Gunnar thou heldest the oaths oftentimes, and of old make firm, by the sun in the south, by Sigtyr's mountain, by the horse of the rest bed in the ring of Ur. In the chamber of bits drew the chieftain great the gold garter down to the place of death. By the warrior's host was the living hero, cast in the din or crawling about. Within were serpents, but soon did Gunnar, with his hand in wrath, on the harp strings smite. The strings resounded, so shall a hero, a ring breaker, gold, from his enemy's guard. Then Atli rode, on his earth-treading steed, seeking his home from the slaughter place. There were clatter of hoofs of the steeds in the court, and the clashing of arms as they came from the field. Out then came Gudrun to meeting with Atli, with a golden beaker as a gift to the monarch. Thou mayst eat now, chieftain, within thy dwelling, blithely with Gudrun, young beasts fresh slaughtered. The wine-heavy ale cups of Atli resounded, when there in the hall the Hunnish youths clamoured, and the warriors bearded, the brave ones entered. Then came in the shining one, and drink she bore him. Unwilling and bitter brought she food to the warrior, till in scorn to the white-faced Atli did she speak. Thou giver of swords, of thy sons the hearts, all heavy with blood and honey thou hast eaten. Thou shalt stomach, thou hero, the flesh of the slain, to eat at thy feast and to send to thy followers. Thou shalt never call to thy knees again, Erp or Eitel, when merry with ale. Thou shalt never see in their seats again the sharers of gold, their lances shaping, clipping the manes or minding the steeds. There was clamour on the benches, and the cry of men, the clashing of weapons, and the weeping of the Huns. Save for Gudrun alone, she wept not ever, for her bare, fierce brothers, or the boys so dear, so young and so unhappy, whom with Atli she had. Gold did she scatter, and swan-white won, and the rings of red gold to the followers she gave. The fates she let grow, and the shining wealth go, nor spared she the treasure of the temple itself. Unwise then was Atli, he had drunk to the wildness. No weapon did he have, and of Gudrun bewared not. Oft their play was better, when both in gladness each other embraced among princes all. With her sword she gave blood for the bed to drink, with her death-dealing hand, and the hounds she loosed. The thrall she awakened, and the firebrand threw in the door of the hall, so vengeance she had. To the flames she gave all, who yet were within, and from Mirkheim she had come, from the murderer of the Gunnar, The timbers all fell, the temple was in flames, the dwelling of the boothlings and the shield maids burned. They were slain in the house, in the hot flames they sank. Now the tale is all told, nor in later time will a woman in Brittany avenge so her brothers. The fair one to three of the kings of the folk brought the doom of death ere herself she died. Still more is told in the Greenland ballad of Atli.